For the next part of our week-long adventure to Portugal, we are going to the famous Algarve region in the south of the country. We woke up super early to grab breakfast before our 4-hour train ride from Lisbon to Lagos. Not too far from our hotel, we found a cafe with delicious-looking pastries and coffee, chowed down, and headed to the train station. At the time we were in Lisbon during July of 2022, there were a lot of train strikes going on, so we were often waiting an extra 30 to 60 minutes for our trains, and this train ride was no exception. But once we finally boarded, things went smoothly and we saw beautiful views and landscapes the whole way to Lagos. We did have one quick train transfer about an hour away from Lagos, but it was all pretty easy to navigate. Once we arrived in Lagos, we started walking to our hostel, Sol Hostel. It was a few hours before check-in time, so we dropped our bags at the storage area and got changed. We stopped at an Aussie cafe across the street for lunch because we were starving. And then we started exploring. Once we started exploring, we were immediately drawn to the beaches. We eventually came across these hiking trails and started exploring this along the shoreline. All of these trails were pretty much just really dry dirt, so it got pretty slippery in the super steep parts. This is what I mean when I say it got pretty slippery in the super steep parts. We were like alongside an edge of a cliff here and I didn't want to fall, so I did a little crab walk down the trail. Look how beautiful and blue the water is though. Wouldn't say it was super clear along the entire coast, but it was so blue. There were definitely pockets where it was more clear than other areas. Here's a cute little video of us having the time of our lives. And if you can tell by the progression of these digital camera photos, my boyfriend likes to stand on ledges and make me nervous. It was a lot of fun to explore the trails on this hike. This is so beautiful. Actually, this way doesn't bother me because like this doesn't look that bad, and I'm like, okay,
it's not that large.
It was getting close to mid-afternoon, and we were allowed to finally check into our hostel. So we started walking back. I gave this cat some water and a seashell, and we checked into our hostel room. We got a private room, and it actually had a beautiful view of the town. Like, look at this. We can see the ocean from our window. We also went and checked out the rooftop area because it just had even better views. After that, we got dressed for the beach. Our hostel actually had free beach equipment to use in the lobby, so we grabbed an umbrella and a mat and started hiking towards a beach we passed on our hike earlier. Getting to this beach required us to hike through this little cave, which we thought was so cool. I decided to set my camera up for a little video so that I could have this as a nice little memory of us on our trip to Portugal, and I thought this was really cute. After the beach, we went back to our hostel to shower and get dressed for dinner, and we walked around town and kind of just explored all the restaurants until we found something we liked. And then we went on a little sunset walk after that and explored the town a little bit more and tried to get to one of the beaches to see the sunset, but we kind of missed it, so we ended up just kind of roaming around and enjoying the evening. On day 2 in Lagos, day 5 in Portugal, we got up early and went looking for a new cafe to try out. After that, we started hiking towards our ending point yesterday on the hike, so we could start where we finished yesterday. It was kind of hazy that day, so the video quality doesn't look that great, but it was still beautiful regardless. Since we saw so many hidden beaches on our hike yesterday, we decided to wear our swimsuits on today's hike and bring a beach mat with us so that we could explore any beaches we found. These trails don't look that hard, and they're not. They're definitely kind of steep, and the dry dirt doesn't help with keeping your balance, but I definitely came out of this with a lot of scratches and scrapes, believe it or not. Just as we were getting to the end of the trail, we realized they had a lot of these boardwalks that you could walk along instead of all the dirt. And we were like, wow, wish we knew about that earlier. But if you don't want to do as much hiking as we did, and you want to go on non-dirt paths, they have some trails that are boardwalks at the end of the hike. We did finally stumble across the perfect beach, which we actually decided to start calling our beach, and the goal was to get down there. We started hiking down, and this was the trail at the beginning. Just for reference of how big these cliffs were, there's me waving down there. And there's the beach that we were trying to get to. It was a bit of a sketchy hike down, but it wasn't that hard. A lot of people were down there, so clearly it wasn't so hard that nobody could do it, but definitely think that you need to be able to use your arms and your legs to get down there for sure. So make sure you wear a backpack or something, or that you're capable of getting up and down this steep incline. But this is the beach. And that tiny little thing poking its head out of the water is me. Here's a good visual of what we hiked down and up to get to this beach. We decided we wanted to do a sunset kayaking trip, so we headed down to the main tourism area to find a tour. Here's some photos of us on that kayak trip. I decided to only bring my digital camera with me because it was waterproof and my phone was not, and I didn't want to lose my phone. But this place was absolutely gorgeous. I definitely recommend doing this, and if you can do a sunset tour, it's like perfectly timed. They actually had something that kind of looked like the Blue Grotto photos I've seen of Capri, Italy. The best part about this trip was when we were done kayaking out, we didn't have to kayak back. They actually had us all tie our kayaks up to each other. We kind of just sat back and we got towed by a boat back to the main launch area. After that, we showered up and went to dinner. We ended up sitting on the rooftop of the hostel and making friends with 2 boys from Germany, and then we ended up going out to bars with them, which was actually a lot of fun. Another really popular thing to do in Lagos is visit the Benagil Caves. So on day 3, we got up early and went down to the tourism area to find a tour to see the Benagil Caves. We actually found the tours in Lagos to be very reasonably priced. I think our kayak tour was around €35, and this boat tour out to the Benagil Caves, which was like a 40-minute or longer boat ride, was only around €42. So we really liked how cheap all the tours were in this area, even though it was a pretty touristy area. Something to note is I actually get really bad motion sickness, but the entire boat ride out, I didn't feel any motion sickness just because we were moving so fast and we didn't really hit any bumps. But the second we went into a cave, the waves were just crashing up and down and moving the boat so hard against, like, we didn't hit any walls, but the waves were going against the walls and just causing a wave pool inside the cave, basically, and that's when I started to get extremely nauseous. So I really wish I took a Dramamine or some kind of motion sickness pill before this, because as you can see, the boat's kind of just rocking like crazy because the waves are just hitting the walls and pushing us back and forth. Oh, careful! Oh my god. If you're staying in Lagos and want to see the Benagil Caves, I actually recommend not doing a boat tour. We learned this the hard way. We only spent about 8 seconds, or at least it felt like it, in the cave, and we couldn't really see much of anything, and because I felt so sick, I was kind of just putting my head between my knees most of the time. I managed to get up and take a video here and there without looking like I was feeling sick, but I felt so nauseous on this entire boat ride after we started going in and out of the caves. I definitely really enjoyed this, don't get me wrong, but instead of doing a boat ride, I recommend doing a kayaking tour. There's actually a small town, literally like right next to this cave. Here's a video of us actually passing the town that had the kayaks coming out of it. So if you look at a map, the purple arrow is pointing to the Benagil Caves, and the pink circle is pointing to the little town that had a lot of tourism companies renting out kayaks and paddleboards to visit the Benagil Caves. So what after felt like a really long boat ride back for me, we went and got lunch, and then we got ready to go to the beach again. We actually went back to our beach, which was the one we went to earlier today, and decided to spend the sunset there. This is my favorite photo from the entire trip. Here is a good video captured by Justin of me trying to hike down to the beach. We ended up staying late enough that we were actually the last 2 people on the beach. So I started recording and we went for a little swim. After our swim, we decided to hike around and look for a higher viewpoint to watch the sunset from. On our way back to town, we actually found some really cool abandoned buildings to explore, and Justin loves that kind of stuff, so we did that. Here's us getting lost and trying to figure out which path to take back home. We were really making the most of this because this is our last day in Lagos. We ended up exploring pretty late and we didn't eat dinner till maybe 9 or 10 when it was already really dark. On our final full day in Portugal, we had to go back to Lisbon. So we checked out of our hostel and put our bags in the storage area. This is what I meant earlier when I was saying storage area. So some hostels don't always have lockers, so it's always important to bring your own bag locks or luggage locks to make sure your stuff is secure if you do have to put it in a place like this. Usually the hostel staff is able to kind of watch over it, but it's always best to keep your stuff locked up. So we grabbed breakfast real quick and made one last stop at the beach to say goodbye. I grew up not too far from New York City and New Jersey, and the bagels there are unmatched, but the one in Portugal we had here was not that bad, I will admit. What's over there? We grabbed a cappuccino also on the way out at a restaurant on the ocean, which was beautiful. We then went back to the hostel to grab our bags and said goodbye to Lagos. Sad face. Our last night in Lisbon, we decided to stay in a new neighborhood called Rossio Square. Not new, but new to us. And this was our hostel. When we walked in, we got another private room, and it was actually surprisingly really nice. I highly recommend this hostel in Rossio Square. This room didn't come with its own private bathroom, but there were private bathrooms in the hallway that we could all use. This also had beautiful views of the city. We decided to grab a bus to the LX factory, which we found on social media. They have a famous bookstore and amazing restaurants to choose from. And here's the inside of that famous bookstore. It was actually really unique to explore. There were a bunch of levels and it was very industrial feeling, and they had books with languages from all over the world. Since we were in Europe, I decided to try an Aperol Spritz, which I had never had before, and actually I think they're disgusting. I had 2 sips and had to make Justin finish it because I felt bad wasting it. It tasted like orange Dramamine, which I used to take as a kid. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I kind of felt like the drink was overrated. And since it was our last night, we decided to roam around the city and make the most of it. We kind of just kept walking until we were too tired to continue. Late night pastel run.
god.
We found a pasteleria.
We eventually came across the Belém Tower and we were in search of Pastel de Nata, so here is a clip of us finally finding a pasteleria. I will admit they were very burnt and not the best Pastel de Nata we had on our trip, but we were desperate for Pastel de Nata before we left in the morning, so this is what we were willing to accept. Good night, Lisbon. We love you, Portugal, and we will definitely be back. Thank you for an amazing experience. Our final day in Lisbon, we were actually leaving, so we had to get up pretty early to make it to the airport for our flight. We dropped our hostel keys in this box on the way out and made our way to the train. Here's Justin making faces at me while he stands in line for coffee at Starbucks. Also, why are the airports in Europe so nice? We are really gonna miss Portugal, even 2 years later as I'm recording this. I wish we were there right now, and I miss it so much. It's one of my favorite trips ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready for departure. United 943 to Washington Dulles. Please be sure you're seated.